Welcome to CSI Chat, where every topic's fair game. From finance to mysteries, we'll never be the same. Our hosts an accountant with a knack for a joke. We'll dive into the details and laugh until we choke. CSI Chat, where the numbers beat the fun. We'll explore every subject under the sun.
Okay. Well, we are very lucky today to be joined by Michael Jarman, the reigning Microsoft Excel world champion. And we're going to get into a little bit of a discussion surrounding that. But before I do, I'm going to give a little bit of background on Michael. He received a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Cambridge. So although he lives in Canada, he's actually not originally from Canada. He's currently a director at Operis, which is a leading advisor in project finance and renowned for its expertise in financial modeling. And what we're here to talk about most today is he is also a Microsoft Excel guru and the reigning Microsoft Excel world champion, which is pretty cool because for a lot of us, whether you're in business or finance or accounting, we live in Excel on a regular basis. Excel is our baseball or our hockey or whatever, whatever the comparable is. So to have somebody who's the best in the world at something that we all use on a regular basis is pretty freaking cool. So Michael, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks very much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
So let's go all the way back to the beginning. Let's go back to university. What did you do in university? And did you always have kind of an interest in statistical modeling?
Yeah, so it's economics at Cambridge, which there are sort of very different economics courses around the world. Some sorts of are more practical, some are more theoretical. I'd say Cambridge, at least when I went, was very much more theoretical. Let's apply this ideal model and see what happens, which was good for me because I was good at maths. But there's a lot. I think a little less, what happens when we try and apply this model to the real world, because not everyone acts rationally. I sort of didn't do too much Excel as that. Like as part of my dissertation, I had to do bits and bobs of statistics and sorts of, regressions, things like that. But I never really did too much Excel as part of my degree. I'd always sort of played around with them as like a child and a teenager and as a sort of a university student, but never really in sort of a professional setting or, anyone who really knew what they was doing. Like, back then I thought using a VLOOKUP would be quite fancy, which I now know to not really be the case. It's only really when I started work that I really sort of took off with Excel.
At what point did you kind of see yourself as an Excel expert? Because we probably, like you say, in economics, it's not a detailed statistical modeling, type of degree. At what point did you kind of get really an interest in Excel and to say, you know what, like maybe I can take this to another level?
It's just always like something I like playing with. Like, I liked playing with numbers. I think the first thing I remember doing Excel was, I think the 2002 World Cup. So I'd have been about 7. Just tracking all the games in that because I had nothing else better to do as a child. So I've always sort of liked playing around with it. If you're a mathy person, Excel's more fun than Word or PowerPoint. And I remember sort of my friends actually send me like the job posting for Operis and was like, oh, you like spreadsheets. This seems like it'd be your path. I was like, oh yeah, it does look quite interesting. But still, like back then, I had no idea that I would do this much Excel or get this good at it. I think it's only really I had an interest, and that's what led me to the job in my current role. But it was only really in working in that I really sort of started to get to a high level in it.
Got it. So when you left university, did you go directly to Operis in the UK then? Is that where you had started? Or did you originally, did you come straight over to Toronto?
No, so I started down in London office in 2014, worked for about 3 years. And then about 10 a bit years in, like our MD pulls me into his office just before Christmas. And he's like, "Do you want to go to Canada?" And I was like, "That's a terrible idea. Why do you go there?" It's December. It's cold enough here.
Exactly.
Ridiculous idea. Thought about it a bit more. could be fun. I'm kind of a bit bored of London. Might be fun to like, live somewhere else, try something new. I'm young. It's the time I'm meant to be doing this sort of thing. And then the story fantasy goes that we had a New Year's Eve party up in Newcastle, which is about 3 hours north, 3 hours north of London. And I got home to London and realized I left my keys at my friend's house in Newcastle. And then I was like, I've had enough London and moved to Canada. So I went back in after Christmas, like, yeah, sure, what's the deal with it? And it was a pretty lucrative deal at the time. I was like, sure, give it a go. Why not? And yes, I came in for 2 years to Convent. About a year and a half in, found my now wife. So she had views on me leaving. So yeah, been here ever since.
And maybe just talk a little bit about operas, because I think the operas experience definitely goes hand in hand with your Excel expertise. If you were in a different role, perhaps where you didn't use Excel to the degree that you use it at operas, you probably are not in the same spot you are in now. But maybe just talk a little bit about your job at operas and what you do and how you really dig deep into the the various functions of Microsoft Excel.
Yeah, so Opera's we're sort of leading advisors in the project finance space. So project finance is generally how you finance large infrastructure projects. So bridges, roads, wind farms. It's a running joke with my friends that whenever we go anywhere, I point at things and go, yeah, worked on that, worked on that. A lot of the hospitals in Toronto. We worked on one of the bids for the Edmonton line. We were the losing bidders. So it's not our fault. It's not open yet. Like huge amounts of infrastructure, especially around Canada and the UK, like the Breed PFI model. We used to do a lot of. Now that's sort of a bit slower, so we do a lot of renewables. And so we essentially, if there is a spreadsheet for this transaction, which they almost certainly will be, we're like the leading people to look at them. So our biggest department, the thing we're known to be best for, is model audit. So you're always seeing in the news, some huge multi-million-dollar error in a spreadsheet, or thousands of patients dropped off spreadsheet or whatever. So our job is to essentially make sure that doesn't happen. Touch wood, anything that's been signed off from operas, that never happened. I lead our model development practice, so more people who actually need that spreadsheet building. And then my sorts of colleagues in the advisory department, if you both need a spreadsheet and also I don't know how to raise $100 billion for this transaction, can you go talk to lenders, please? And we're like, yeah, sure. Help structure the transaction, talk to the lenders, talk to the insurance people, talk to whatever. So that are main sort of pieces of our main sort of departments. And you can see all of them very much focus on spreadsheets. And then, a couple of small departments, we have some software called Oak, the Opera's Analysis Kit, which some of your listeners might have on their laptop right now and not realize who it's from or why it's called Oak. That's just like an Excel add-in that people have that just makes navigating these spreadsheets, moving around them a bit easier, as well as some more powerful tools. And then training as well. If you're sat there going, every time I build a spreadsheet, it turns into a mess and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. The answer is you don't really have a good sort of stable footing of like, this is what you should do, this is best practice, this is what to avoid. And that's what our training department go out and teach as well. So yeah, to do with spreadsheets. Obviously there's a world outside of spreadsheets we have to keep in mind, but yeah, like we are a company of people who love like working with these financial models in Excel.
Yeah, we certainly have that. We can certainly relate over on this side of the this side of the fence. Why do you think Excel is used? Like you mentioned, these are multi-billion-dollar transactions that are being contemplated, and we had talked a little bit before we got on about little mistakes can rise up to a big impact on cash flows and things like that. Why do you think there's still so much reliance on Microsoft Excel? Like it's amazing, frankly, that Excel has lasted all of these years. There doesn't seem to be a competitor out there that is anywhere infringing on Excel. Like I think with Word and PowerPoint, there might be a few others that are starting to get into their space a little bit. But with Excel, it just seems to be the product of choice, no matter what. What's your perspective on that, Michael? Like, why do you think Excel has stood the test of time?
It's a great question. And I think, I'll kick off by saying that I don't think Excel is going anywhere anytime soon. And I think the reason for that is it's just like anybody can open a spreadsheet and like figure out how to at least scroll to the sheet that has the answer they need. Like if you're a senior banker who that's forgot their Excel days or even never really had any, if you're that senior a banker, you can still open a spreadsheet and go and find the number you want and maybe play around, reload a couple of scenarios. You don't need to be an expert in it to be able to interface with the software. That's not always been the case. Like when Opera started, 35 years ago, we only hired computer science graduates because you did probably need a degree in computer science to open a spreadsheet and figure out how it works. But nowadays, anyone can click in it, anyone can go around, and that's both a blessing and a curse. But because it also, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing with many pieces of software, and I think because it has such a low barrier to entry, I think people can maybe overestimate their own ability sometimes, and that's where these errors can creep in. But yeah, I just think everybody knows how to at least get something out of a spreadsheet, and I think someone told me at some point, I think half of spreadsheets don't even use a function, or some sorts of. It's a bigger number than you think. Right, that is almost certainly a native statistic, but it is probably around that ballpark. It's just people, who just use it as a calendar or to schedule things. They don't need all these fancy, even some, people would say, is fancy. Like they don't need this because it's a grid, it's intuitive, and people can just use it and figure out how it works. And looking at how ubiquitous it is, every time there's an Excel killer that comes onto the market and there's for this, thing that, there's use case that people have a lot of times in the FP&A space, because that is full of people who hate using Excel and misuse it a lot by accident. And they go, we've got this great new thing that you can use instead to track all of your receipts, your accounts, whatever. But the first thing anybody asks in any of those meetings when they're being pitched to by these companies is, but does it export to Excel? Right? And they're always going to ask that because they always want something familiar, right? So I don't see Excel going anywhere anytime soon. I think maybe how people interface with it, with, the rise of AI, Copilot, whatever, that could change. But I think Excel's been here for, it's just celebrated its 40th birthday, and I would be surprised if it's not here for another 40 years in some iteration.
How do you, and obviously AI gets a lot of press when it talks about language models, about breaking down language and being able to come back with answers. My based on my own interactions with some of these folks, is that it's much more difficult to do that with an Excel worksheet, to ask, some sort of an AI to say, look, what happens if I change growth rates and things like that in a spreadsheet? At least it's not there yet. Interesting to get your perspective, Michael. How do you think AI impacts Excel in 5 years? Do you think it, where do you think the low hanging fruit is there with respect to artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I think it is certainly getting better. And I think the thing that I think it's very good at now is it's good at explaining and suggesting things to people from sort of the beginner to intermediate level, both whether that's using an LLM like ChatGPT, using Excel's inbuilt Copilot feature. It's good at sort of getting people who are like, I have this simple logical problem and I don't know how to solve it. And then Copilot goes, you need this function you've never heard of called XLOOKUP, or you need to use an index map. And I think it's already quite good at that. And it's getting better. We can talk about how AI is impacting the competitive sphere maybe in a bit, but let's just stick to, people's use cases for now. I think there's a lot of people out there who are already trying to tout that learning modeling as an analyst is finished because they've solved it. Certainly, in my sphere of DCF modeling or LBO modeling in banking, there's already people who are like, look at our new fancy tool that can build an LBO model in 10 minutes. And you go, wow, that's great. Well done. I think Shortcut have come out and said they have a stat I really like. It's they beat a first year Morgan Stanley analyst 83% of the time. And I'm sat there going, well done. They're kids out of school. I could be a first year Morgan Stanley analyst 100% of the time. It was 99, I'd be annoyed. They don't know what they're doing. And the thing is, it's very good at these demos where it builds a simple-ish model, simple to moderate model in a sandbox. And for a lot of people, that's all they need. And that's great. And I think certainly, with things like Copilot, where it teaches people this is how to build the function that you didn't know how to build. I think that's great. I think there will always be a need for a more sophisticated modeler, who can understand how to model an entire complex deal. Because I think, look at AI, I think it can tackle lots of little problems. This is how to model the revenues, the cost, the debt. It can tackle them all individually, but then bringing them together, I think it's a bit more of a mismatch. If I'm a mismatch of trying to get things to, marry together. And I think there will always need to be people to that. And also, once you've got the spreadsheet, you still need someone to understand what to do with it.
Exactly.
It's like it's not like and it is probably like a modeler's greatest lament, and certainly operas like our analyst films is like they spend days and weeks like building this lovely model and like use these elegant formulas and whatnot. You send it to a client, and the first thing the client always says is, "Oh, can that graph be blue, please?" Right? Because they just want to see the outputs, right? And they need to understand the outputs and how we've got there. And we're never going to replace that unless, we get to true artificial intelligence and then the AI is doing the whole deal for us and then we're all out of a job. And that's a different story. And I think the thing that, certainly, we are sort of starting to, do sophisticated, build some sophisticated AI tools to, do some reconstructions in our audit process and the build process that are like the more tedious side of things.
Yep.
And we are doing a lot of soul searching at the moment that goes, well, we still want to hire analysts because if we don't hire analysts now, we don't have managers in 4 to 5 years' time. And if we get a computer to do all the grunt work that they're doing, what are they going to do? And that grunt work, although it's boring and tedious, that's how they A, get good at Excel and fast at using Excel, and B, that's how they start getting like an intuitive understanding of how the deal works.
Agreed.
For any sort of new person as they come into like the world of like finance or accounting, they don't really intuitively understand a 3-statement model until they build one. I remember when I started, I was like, well, a balance sheet kind of it makes sense. This cash flow makes sense. What's this P&L for? What's the point of this? Right.
Yep.
And it's only when you've actually built one, you understand the interlinking, that you really understand how all these things affect each other. And with all of these AI killers, and like there are companies out there who are slashing hiring of their analysts because they're like, oh, well, we can just have all the grunt work be done by AI. You're like, yeah, but what are you going to do when you need in 10 years' time someone experienced to understand what the AI has done? Because it will do something wrong in the same way as our juniors do something wrong. Like everyone makes mistakes. The computer will make mistakes because it's misinterpreted something. And until anybody really gives me a solution to that, I think there's a lot of bluster at the moment of people in Silicon Valley going, "Oh, we've replaced everything," and that's their job, is to essentially make up, patchy marketing things. They once convinced us that it was Juicero, that thing that squeezed a bag of fruit into a cut, was worth 300 million. Like, there were some great salesmen out there, but I think it's important to remain grounded in reality and remember that we still are going to need people to use these spreadsheets, to understand these spreadsheets. The only way they're really going to keep getting a tight pipeline of those is by having some people build these spreadsheets in some way. It can look different, but we need people in some way.
I agree. I agree with everything you just said, Michael. I think you're bang on. I think it's the AI that's taking those junior analyst roles, but you better be careful that it doesn't take all of them, because again, to replace the next Michael Jarman in 5 or 10 years or whatever it may be, there's going to be nobody there to do that. The AI to move beyond, well, who knows? Maybe it can at some point, but it's certainly not there yet. And then again, the manager roles, have this whole layer of human interactions, listening to clients, listening to what they want. I completely agree. So you've probably seen lots of spreadsheets. Obviously, you've probably seen lots of spreadsheet errors. What's the most common error? I'm sure you've seen some big ones. I'm guessing in the millions and millions of dollars. Is there one that jumps out as saying this is the most common? You fill across hidden rows or some, VLOOKUP that's picking up the wrong column. Is there one that boils down and say this is the most common error out of everything?
That's a really good question. It's what I'm surprised I've not really thought about before, because I don't think it was asked me before. I think like each error is unique, but I think a lot of them, especially in models that are less well constructed by sort of less experienced people, a lot of errors can creep in by not making your formulas left to right consistent. So, say you want your model to do something in the first 2 years and something in the next three, and you manually just go, right, first 2 years are going to have this formula, and the next three I'm going to change it manually. And then at some point, you change the period that you want 2 years to 3 years, or 4 years, but you don't realize that all the formulas are wrong. I think a lot of errors can creep in through that. Luckily, a lot of the models we see nowadays sophisticate enough so that people don't really do that anymore as much as they did 10, 15 years ago. And I think the other one that is perhaps underrated by people, and I think certainly our audit where we are by far away ahead of the competition, is misinterpreting what sorts of the documents say about a deal, like getting that translation from what the lawyer has written down correctly into the financial model. And sometimes that's because someone has just misread something or misinterpreted something. But also, and I've seen this in deals that have closed before, will come back years later, it's because the lawyer doesn't really have a financial background and they don't realize that what they've written down is in fact complete nonsense. It's like, oh, this mathematically is like, I can see why you think mathematically this was correct, but if you actually tried this, it would give a stupid result. And then you have to sort of go, well, what were they intending to do? And that's a whole other kettle of fish. But yeah, I think certainly that is a part of modeling that I think is really underappreciated, is especially if you get to some sort of quite complex mechanisms, whether that's revenue mechanisms, debt mechanisms, whatever, is not getting the two to marry up. I remember there was recently a client with a very big deal. I can't say who it was, but a very, very multi-billion-dollar deal had come to us saying that they had written down, they had read the documents and they had built one revenue model. The authority they were working with had read them and got a different revenue model, and the two didn't align. And they were like, which of these is right? It's a big argument because obviously the two people are arguing over what the correct number is. And I think the correct answer was neither of them. The answer was somewhere in the middle because, there's interpretations that you can make both ways and whatnot. But I think that is a very big area of modeling that is misunderstood.
And presumably you've seen, I'm guessing, deals fall apart where it's all done, and then you guys get the spreadsheet and like, that multiplied by 10 should have been multiplied by 10%, and therefore, you're off by a few million, and the whole deal falls apart.
It's rare, but it does happen. So we sort of delineate issues sort of A, B, C, and Q. Q is a queries, and A, B, and C are like, C is, this is very minor. B, this is, you should fix this. And A is, oh my God, this won't work. Like, we will not sign off on this model. They're actually quite rare. Like, I'd say as a company, you see 3 to 5 a year across all the deals that we do. But those are like literally issues where you go, if you fix this, I'm not sure you have a deal still.
And Michael, what does the client say? I guess they say thank you, right?
Back to the drawing boards. Yes. Sometimes it's like, it's a huge issue, but like, it's still, if you fix it, you're like, well, there's still like a thing that you do there. It might not look what we thought it was going to look like. But we can still get by. There have been a couple of times where essentially we've gone away and we've never really heard from the deal again. But luckily that is very rare. That would be, you've got $100 million deal and you're off by $100 million. So it's an absolute disaster. To use the same thing, like with the issue, like there's lots of times where a $100 million deal we're out, like you're out by 5 million. It's a big deal. Like, it does change the economics of your transaction, but it should still work as an idea. You still got like a project here that can economically function.
So you're in the weeds working at Operas, in Excel. I'm sure with all your colleagues there. And at some point you must have realized, man, like I'm getting like really good at Microsoft Excel. Was there a particular moment that stuck out? Because you're not just really good, you're the best in the world at Microsoft Excel. So this isn't like presumably you're looking at this and with again, a bunch of colleagues who are also experts in Excel, but there must've been one moment where you said, man, like I'm not only good, I'm like, I'm like one of the best potentially in the world at Microsoft Excel. Was there a particular moment that stood out, Michael, where you said, man, I can, this is something here?
It took a while. So I think like you're right to say like we're a company of Excel people. So everybody I work with is somewhat good at Excel, like the top 1% of people. And I know, for a fact that there are some people who have maybe struggled at Operas and maybe be like one of the weaker modelers, and they've gone to another company and everyone looks at them like a god, right? So
Exactly.
we are a company of Excel people. And I think the thing like, as sort of my first 1 or 2 years of my career went, like I certainly didn't think I was the best or anything, but I did notice that I was faster than a lot of my colleagues. Like I would just smash through the work, and I'd sort of pick up things slightly faster. Or I'd think of ways to model things that were slightly quicker to do, somewhat quicker on the keyboard, though I think that's an underrated thing. Um, but so I always thought that, and like I knew about competitive Excel pretty much since I joined. Like when I joined Operis, one of my managers, Hilary Smart, who still works with us, she was the reigning world champion of a competition called Model Off that was more financial modeling based. So she won that in 2013. So I'd always known about competitive Excel, and 2017 came, so I'd worked for about 3 years. I was like, this competition seems quite fun. I like problem solving. I like working fast. Like, let's apply and see how I do. Didn't think I'd do that well, and then got to the final, which is like the top 16 people,
Wow.
and was like, oh, well, that I wasn't expecting at all. And I remember like looking at, the other 15 finalists, and I was 23. I had 3 years of Excel experience. I think there were two other people under 30, and most people had like 10, 20 years of experience. I'm like, I'm going to get crucified here. And I turned up and I was like, you can ask my colleagues this. Like, it's genuinely, I turned up and was like, all I want to do is not come last.
Yeah.
All right, I'll take that. That would be an incredible achievement. And then we're doing the award ceremony and they say third place, Michael Jarman. I'm like, what? How did that happen? I was just shocked. I sat down and the guy sat next to you and it was like the first time he'd been speechless all weekend. Because I do like chatting to people. And I was completely and utterly shocked. And I was like, maybe I'm not too bad at this. And then so the next year I went along to the same competition, Model Off. In the intermediate period, apparently all the other finalists who were my sort of co-finalists, like about 10 of them had been to like every finals in the last 5 years. And the organizers of the board are the same people turning up. So they said, right, anyone who's been to 3 or more finals is being forcibly retired to the Hall of Fame. So I turned up next year. I was like, oh, all the people who are better than me are now gone. So I won. Wasn't easy, of course. There were still some great people left. It was a little bit bittersweet. But I won. I was like, well, great, get to put world champion on the TV. That's always good. But I still thought that there are people out there who I think better than me. Like I think I've met Diarmid a couple of times, but I hadn't talked to him that much as like he's miles ahead of me. But I think about that point. I'm pretty good at this. And then as Model Off folded and then we had this new competition coming out of the Ashes, the fact that I keep doing well, I'm like, okay, I am now happy to say that I'm one of the best people at this. So it's taken a while.
And what gets weighted more, Michael? Is it, you mentioned that, speed was one of the big things for you. Is it speed that trumps problem solving, or does problem solving trump speed? Like or do you really, or are both of them equal weight? Like if you were to put more effort into one versus the other, what do you think is more important? And what can fewer people do? Like are lots of problem solvers out there, but they're just not fast, or there's lots of people fast who just can't work through the problems?
I think both are very important, as you say. I think the format that certainly the Microsoft Excel Championship, like all of the questions or 98% of the questions are half an hour. So it is the ability to, you get a couple of minutes beforehand where you see the case video and you learn what you're doing and you can think about it for a few minutes. And then you've got half an hour to build something. So I think speed is crucial. And there's certainly people out there, like I'll give sort of Bo Ridderbon, the Excel Wizards, a shout out. Like you look at some of his solutions for the more complex problems and you go, I no idea what he's doing. I couldn't possibly follow this. Even Dim says that. Uh, and yeah, he's an absolute genius, but he is much better at like, spending a couple of hours with a problem and finding the best, most elegant, fantastic solution. In half an hour, he does decently well. He is disadvantaged because he's Thai and his English, I think he's Thai. And his English isn't perfect. So, he does have the language barrier as a lot of competitors do there. So it takes him a bit longer to understand what's going on. But he's just one that, tends to like, prefer taking a bit longer. I very much think I lean more towards the read the question incredibly fast and just go. And I think, there's still problem solving in there. And I think probably the thing that sets me and maybe the top 2 or 3 other competitors apart is that we can, within 5 or 10 seconds, look at a problem and decide not only how we're going to do it, but most of the time be right and be like, you look back and go, even if it wasn't the best, most elegant solution, it rarely is because you're optimizing for simpler things early on. And as the questions get harder, you're like, oh, I wish I hadn't kind of made that shortcut. But like the fact that most of the time, you look at what we've done, and you go, yeah, this was not far off what I'd do in an ideal world if I thought about this for 2 hours. It's at least close enough that you get enough points. And I think that is probably where the top competitors can set themselves apart. And that's obviously a bit of a challenging answer because I think like some of that's something you can learn just by doing the questions. Some of it is you naturally have it or you don't.
Yeah, how do you like? And is there a way to prepare? Is the way to prepare just trying to do sample questions, as many sample questions as you possibly can, in an environment that is similar to how you're going to compete?
Yeah, absolutely. And for anybody who's listening who hasn't heard of this but thinks it sounds interesting, there has never been a better time to like give it a go and get involved. I say that with a caveat, it's too late to enter the championships this year. The top, well, actually, no, it's not. You can go to Las Vegas. There's a last chance round. The top 16 people on the first day of the conference will qualify into the championships. So it's not too late to get involved. But if you've never heard of it, I'd start practicing now. But there's never been a better time. Like there are so many cases out there, right? We've had 5 years of the main championship. They make, nowadays about 30 cases a year. In the early days, it's close to 10 or 15. I would not start with like the 2021 or 2022 cases because some of them are a bit zany out there, right? They haven't balanced difficulty yet. There's local chapters. There's probably 9 or 10 now countries or regions. There's a German speaking one. There's a UK one, there's a Madagascar one, there's I think Indonesia, India, Azerbaijan. I said UK. That's what I work with. And they all have their own cases pretty much. Generally a little bit easier. In the case of the UK one, probably not that much easier. But a little designed to be a little more approachable for people who are getting involved. And then there's a community of people who just have ideas for cases and they just release them to free. Like, there's a guy called Cody Dobromsky, something like that, who did a Jurassic Park. Well, he called it Cretaceous Park for legal reasons. But I did like and one themed around Jurassic Park. He did a Settlers of Catan one. And there's been probably 10 or 20 just free cases that people do with just ideas that they have that they release them maybe because they don't have, it's not quite the right format. Like it could be a little too hard. It'd be like something that would take an hour for someone to do, not half an hour. So it's not quite the right thing, or it's a bit zany or out there with like its theming. But there's so many sort of free cases out there that there's a repository of as well. So I think it didn't set like there's 200 or 300 cases now at least.
Wow.
It's mad, and that is more than enough to get going. And just sit down, give one a go, and then. At the end, look at what you could have maybe done differently. And the other thing I'll say is for especially the more popular cases, there are so many content creators out there now who are, doing videos of this is my solution to, this problem. David Early is probably the biggest one. He probably has the most videos. Excel Finance, Excel Wizard. Like, there's so many people doing these sorts of walkthrough videos, and you can learn so much from watching them. So if you do a case, I'd say do it by yourself first, and then look at what you did. And then if there's a video on it, go and see what the pros did and how they tackled it. Because there'll be so many like, oh, I didn't think of that. I didn't know you could do that moments. And you learn so much from doing it that way.
Got it. Now, you mentioned speed. I think what people might find interesting is how you might modify your keyboard in advance of in advance, because apparently there's a couple of keys that are not used in Microsoft Excel, or maybe they're used, but if you push them, they're going to slow you down to a crawl. Maybe just give us some perspective, Michael, on what you do with your keyboard prior to entering one of these competitions.
Yeah, it's not just a competitive thing. There's loads of people in finance and banking who do the same thing. The biggest one is F1. The F1 key is out. I don't need help. I know what I'm doing. And the annoying thing is F1 is next to F2, and F2 is edit cell. So it's really annoying. You press F2, you miss slightly, and Excel goes, it's not quite that paperclip anymore, but it's still like, oh, I need some help. Like, no, go away. So a lot of people rip their F1 key off their keyboards, and Oak now just has an option to turn that help off. So Opera now we've stopped ripping keyboards apart, which is good. I also, again, this is more of a work thing. I ripped off the scroll lock key because I don't think anybody in the history of computing have ever needed scroll lock.
Yeah,
Like the only time anyone ever wants to press scroll lock is when they've realized they've turned it on.
exactly.
And they're going, why is this being weird? Oh, where's the scroll lock button? So I ripped that off ages ago as well. But I mean, I was like, I now use the keyboard that, like the winner gets a load of free stuff from Logi. So I've got, their keyboards, which you can't rip keys off, is one of the fancier ones. So that now has everything intact, which is good. Although they replaced the right-hand control key with a Copilot button, which has taken me a while to get used to, because again, as I'm trying to press control left with my right hand because I'm doing something else with my left, like doing some other shortcut.
And Michael,
Copilot
just
comes
on
up-
that, on that one, Michael, are you allowed to use Copilot in these competitions?
No, well, no. So at the start of the year, you were. And at the start of the year, AI couldn't beat me. All the other top competitors. We got about 3 months in, and suddenly it could. And it could actually, it got really good really fast. There's a guy, Diego, who's probably done the most of this. I'm like, he entered and was like doing really well. And like, he was allowed to do this. There was nothing saying he couldn't. And he was getting like top 10 scores by just putting that, like, he prompt engineered, like, he had a standard start of like, you are in the Microsoft Excel World Championship. You will be given a case like this. This is the format. This is the answers. This is the format I want the answers in. This is how I will tell you you've done something wrong. And he sort of set that up with some code. And he got to the point where, like, he could point. I think he used Gemini for most things. I think he found that was the best for this sort of complex problem solving. And there were lots of cases where he could plug it in, and it would give him a perfect solution in 5 to 10 minutes. And I think it got to the point where not only could it tell him the answer, but it would be a black box. So it's like the answer to question 23 is 104 and so on.
Wow.
It would actually give him a full spreadsheet that looked like a human made it that he could submit. And that is great. Like, that is, an achievement unto itself. Like, nothing against him doing that. And again, it was allowed. And essentially, the competition organizers looked at everything and I think correctly went, well, this is interesting, but it's not why we've come here. Like, if the championships was just 12 of us just essentially pressed go on Gemini or K-Pilot or Paul or whichever one, and just hoped we got the correct answer the fastest, and like the random temperature in the model gave us the right one, that wouldn't be interesting, right? So they have now come out and generally banned it. You're still, I think, allowed to use LLMs to translate. So for those who English isn't a first language, I think they're allowed to put questions into the LLM, but they have to be very specific in saying, like, do not provide any hints or context of what to do. Literally just translate this and then go away. Which, I mean, Google has a translate function now, which they added this year. So hopefully, that they need that a little less. But in general, yeah, it's all now banned because I think, you could make an argument that, like, is asking Copilot, what is the function that, does this, and it tells you, like, is that allowed? And you are still allowed to use Google. Although, again, Google now has the automatic AI button, which, makes a gray area there. Like, we don't want this to be a test where, if somebody genuinely doesn't know what to do, they can still go and, like, research and find out. At the end of the day, if they don't know what they're doing, they're already in a bit of trouble. And the
They got
people who
30
do know
minutes,
what they're
right?
doing are going to go and do it.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, it's really tough to know like where to put the line now between what's just research you do it yourself and what's AI, and they're trying to sort of come on the line of being a bit too strict because we don't want any ambiguity over it. But it's also, it's very difficult to police. Until we go to Vegas, pretty much every round is done at home. A few people are live streamed, but most people aren't. Obviously, someone could go to Vegas using AI, and then they turn up, and if they're not very good, they'll get found out pretty quickly. But it is very hard to police in any sort of practical way. Like, we could use screen monitoring, but a lot of people compete on their work laptops. Can't do that for various IT and legal reasons. Even if they could, who's going to watch everything? Like, it's a real nightmare to police in the same way as many exams that are taken at home are now becoming a nightmare to police for the same reason.
And the one tool that I think you're allowed to bring in there is lambda formulas. Maybe give us the layman view, Michael. What is a lambda formula, and how does that help in the in the competition?
Yeah, so lambda formulas were added, I want to say like 4 each years ago. Maybe it's 2, maybe it's 5, I can't remember. And a lambda is essentially, it's build your own function at home. So Excel has a plethora of functions. It has about 600. Some of them are useful. Your index, your X lookups. Some of them are, do hyperbolic tangents or whatever, which I'm never going to use. Someone out there presumably would. But, you are limited by that toolbox. And then Excel said, well, we're going to make this equal lambda. And essentially, it's a way of saying, okay, I want to make my own function. So I'm going to take a number of inputs, any number that you want, really. And then I'm going to say, with these inputs, do this list of Excel functions to it. So a good example would be a common thing that we have to do in a competition is split like a string of characters into one character per cell. And there is no function in Excel to do that. There's text split that can split by delimiters, but if you just I want each, so say you've got a list of directions like U, L, R, R, D, up, left, right, whatever. I want to split that into a list of cells so that I can then do something with them. There is no function to do that. There is a way of doing it. You use mid and sequence and len. And everybody knows how to do that. It's not really interesting to watch someone do that. So most people will make their own function. Mine's called car split, that you just point it in, it does that for you.
Oh, wow.
So that's quite a simple one. A more complex one would be quite a few cases are, here is a map on a grid. The organizers like these sort of cases because they're quite visual. Last year on the semi-finals was like, you're in like a temple and there are all these walls that you have to go around. Essentially, it's a maze. And you can go through different things at different speeds, whatever. And essentially, how do you convert a map in itself? That one's a little more difficult. If anyone playing along at home, pause now and have again. But essentially, you say for each cell, look at my neighbors, look at the minimum of those and add the cost of moving. And then it's horrifically circular, but it eventually converges to something. And you get like a grid of the cost of moving from a cell to any other list of cells. And again, people know how to do that. So they generally try and lambdaize it into just a function they can call quickly so that they can then deal with the meat and potatoes of the problem. The interesting thing with all of this is this is all legal and you can bring as many lambdas as you want and they can be as complex as you want. You can make lambdas that would solve an entire previous case in 10 seconds if you wanted. Wow. But people aren't going to do that because they're never going to set the same case again, right? You don't get any prizes for solving a case that was set last year. Right? You do that. So it's all this arms race between the people writing the lambdas going, generally, the concept of reversing a map isn't new, so I have a lambda to do that. But then someone might be like, well, okay, you can only move down or left for some reason. Or moving down or left is much easier than moving up because you're swimming or something. I don't know. So essentially the people who play along are trying to write more and more powerful and complex lambdas that can solve these problems easier and easier. And then the case writers are going, well, because people have these numbers, I have to make these cases even harder and more lambda proof, like to design them in a way so that if somebody comes with this pre-made function, it will, like the way we've written the question will break it in some way. And that is making the cases harder. And certainly for like the finals cases, and if someone's at home like keen to get involved, I would start with like one of the local chapter cases or one of what's called the Road to Las Vegas cases first. The final cases are designed to be really difficult for people who have like these nuclear weapon signs landers that can trivialize things. So yeah, I certainly wouldn't start with some of the hard ones because it can be pretty brutal.
So if we now talk about specifically about Microsoft Excel World Championships, how do you qualify? What's the qualification process to get in?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that. It's a very, very complex process. It's only complex insofar as there's many ways to get. So where do I start? Right. Let's start with the bracket. So we just finished the bracket portion of the competition. So that is, we do 256 people and they face off one-on-one in 5 rounds, and it's March Madness or the FA Cup, depending on, where you're from. But essentially it's just a pure knockout. And you could do really well in one round, but if the person you're against does better, tough luck.
Are you seeded in any way, Michael? Like, would you be seeded?
You are
as
seeded, yes.
Okay.
I will get to that. So the way you qualify, so there's 256 spots. There's 2 ways of qualifying for that. There's what's called the Road to Las Vegas. There's like mini battles that we had throughout the year, just so we have something to watch and to play along with. And the top 10 people from each of those battles qualify automatically. And then out of that is also, that's how the seeding is done. Like the top 32 people are seeded. There's then a big qualification round for the 150 odd spots. They leave a few for wild cards and local chapter winners and whatever. But there's a big qualification round around September. And that's like your big chance to like get in. So we have this 256 people, March Madness. We get down to 64. So that's 2 rounds. We then say in the 3rd round, everybody who wins this gets a day 2 spot in Vegas. I'll explain that in a minute. All the losers, some of the lucky losers with high scores get through as well. They then keep going down to the final 8. And if you get down to the final 8, which I did, so actually 5 wins in a row in total, you get a day 3 spot in Vegas. Following so far. The point is, like, essentially it's when you get, like, the easy way of putting it is the further you get through the bracket, the more rounds in Vegas you get to skip.
It's like a bye round, round in the playoffs.
Yeah. You're essentially playing to get a bye. So I've got a bye for the first 2 days, which is great. Because
is that for this year, Michael? You're talking for 2025?
Yeah, this is for this year. This is in a month. So day 1 is the last chance round I alluded to earlier. Anybody can go to that. Like, you can turn up to the conference. I don't think you have to go to the conference, but you still have to get a ticket to turn up and play in the last chance round. And 16 people get through from that into day 2. And there's some great people in that this year. Like, it's going to be a bloodbath. Not want to dissuade people from having a go, but like, there are some very talented people who got knocked out before they got their day 2 ticket. Day 2 is then 64 people. So that's the people from, the middle of the bracket who got knocked out after 2 or 3 rounds. The last chance people, 64 of those, they compete in 2 rounds just for highest, like, combined scores. The top 16 of those win and get through to day 3. There's then 24 people in day 3, and they then just compete to win.
I see.
So it's quite complicated, but the takeaways are there's lots of chances to qualify for the main bracket, which is probably how you want to get through. And then the further you get through the main bracket, the more buys you get.
So when you won in 2024, did you get a day 3 bye in 2024?
I got a day 2 buy.
A day 2 bye. Okay.
So 2023, when I came second, I actually got knocked out in the first round. And this is like the magic of the cup, right? This is why a lot of people complain about this. I think it's great. I got the 3rd highest score of anybody doing that question in that round. I lost to the 2nd highest score. Um, so if I'd have been in virtually any other pairing, I'd have got through. But that's the luck of the draw. I got knocked out, so I had to get through day one. Last year, I say got knocked out. I didn't play because the first two rounds and the other rounds are on separate days. I was in the middle of the Andes during the qualifying rounds for day three, so I just couldn't play. Yeah, I think I wouldn't have won anyway. I think I'd have got knocked out in the last round. So if anything, I'd saved myself some time. But yeah, I got through day two. And day two, I mean, Dermot Early, who people, even though he's never won, people say he's the best. He never makes day three. He always gets knocked out at some point because it's so hard and you need some luck to win 5 rounds in a row, even if you're like, go, because it's just, there's every question is different. Some of them are your style, some of them aren't. Some of them might be your opponent's style. You need a bit of luck to draw as well.
Yep.
So yeah, last year I sort of qualified through day two. I came like 9th. I didn't even do that well in day two. And then day three I came through to win.
So when you're presented a question, then you've got 30 minutes to solve it. And how do they evaluate the winner? So if it's 1v1, what are the core, like, how do they come up with that final score for your particular problem, your particular output at the end of the day?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's use as an example one of the recent questions in the qualifying rounds that I did round 3. I really like this example, but it's very good for people at home, or at least people over 25. So do you remember the old T9 phone keyboards before we had proper keyboards?
No, I don't remember so this is before like the ASDF type of like no, I don't.
I mean like a phone keyboard, like you'd press 3 times to get an F, and then you press I don't know, 4 times to get it. Like the old keyboards where like on your phone, it'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then to text letters, you'd have to press like the number 4.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So one of the questions was essentially that. And so that's sort of setting the scene. Most of the questions now, they're pretty set in their format. So there's 7 levels of increasing difficulty. So the first level will just be, if you want to type F, what do? You press the letter 3 times. So that's pretty easy. Like most people who had used Excel in some way could probably figure out how to do that. And even if they couldn't, they could just do that manually. And then, it gets all the way up to level 7, where level 7 is like, here are entire messages which use punctuation and whatnot. And I pressed all of these buttons, translate all of these buttons into a message. So you can see how level 1 is obviously different, like much easier than level 7. And generally there's a difficulty curve as you go. And the points are essentially scaled to that. So for each level, you'll be given usually 20 questions, just so that it isn't worth doing it manually yourself. It's worth building a model to build it for you, because if you do it manually, it's just going to take you so long to get through every single one. You see, essentially, you usually start with level 1, do the easy thing, make it a bit harder, and then it could be that your model has some error in it. So in the texting example, one of the big things was, spacing, capitalization. It could be that you have a slight, you're getting the right sort of characters, but they're not capitalized correctly and so on. If some of the answers didn't happen, you'd be fine. You'd get some of the marks. So essentially, you're getting through, and what usually happens is you either get stuck or you just run out of time whilst you're running, like doing all the harder questions, and
I see.
you compete on how to do that. The bonus questions then add a little bit of spice to it, and especially sort of in Vegas. So the bonus questions are essentially, they're like side quests. How side questy can be, that is up to the author. One of them called Seamstress Fast, which is essentially synonym to Taylor Swift. And essentially it was all about, her concerts and tracking them around the world, and, the CT prices and whatnot. Peter Shah, the author, he essentially did the 5 bonus questions were completely unrelated to everything. It was just, you're making some bracelets as the Swifties like to do, and what are the point values of them. Most of the times they're somewhat related to the question, but rather than moving on, you have to go and solve a more difficult thing or answer something about the question that requires some time and takes it away. But the interesting thing about it is it could be that you're stuck on a question, you haven't got that time, so you can go after them. But also in Vegas, there's only so many people who can score those bonuses. They're time wise. So in the one-on-one streams, generally like the first 1 or 2 people who gets a bonus, only those people can store the coins. After that, even if the person gets the right answer, they get nothing. They're told they won't get anything, but they can't score. So there's a bit of strategy of, do you go after the bonuses, hope you get them, and then you're ahead there, but then if you don't get them and someone else has got them, you've wasted all that time and you're doubly behind? Or do you just go, these bonuses are a waste of time, and I think actually I'll get further on the main question, which is worth far more points. Like the 7 levels are worth 1,000 in total. The bonus is worth 250 in total. So, generally it's better to like get a level 7 working, which is like the hardest thing, because that's going to be worth, I don't know, 200-300 points, than it is to waste some time with the bonuses. So there's a lot of like strategy of what do you spend your time doing?
Got it. So if we were to see Michael Jarman at the day 3 competition, how do you prepare? What's that day 3 look like for you? Are you a totally different person? Like, I don't know if you're a baseball fan, but you're not talking to Max Scherzer when the day he's got a pitch, because he's got his nickname of Mad Max for a reason. I'm just wondering your prep for that day, Michael. Are people talking to you, or are you just completely laid back and and then the clock hits and it's go time? What's your kind of prep, leading into that day 3 this year?
Yeah, I think obviously everyone has different routines, and I can't overstate enough. Like for people at home who've ever been sat there with a spreadsheet that isn't working, and that's quite stressful. It's much worse with thousands of people watching you, right? So, and these are people. I mean, some of the people have they've done sports to like high up before. A lot haven't. And the impact of like going out on stage, everyone's there, and you do sort of breathe up a bit. So there's definitely a lot to that you can't really prepare for.
Absolutely.
And I certainly think that me and like the other competitors who've done it a few times have an advantage over those that don't. Because if you're new, like the first time I went out, I was like, forgot everything I knew for a couple of minutes.
How many people are watching live, Michael? Is there a lot of people in the audience then? Because it's a big deal, right?
Yeah. So we're in the HyperX arena in Las Vegas. I would say it's an order of several hundreds are there.
Okay.
The first year, like we didn't really, use all the space, but like last year, like the stands were sold out. We had all the seats on the floor were taken, and there were people on the balcony as well. And like if we grow at the same rate this year, I think the year after we're gonna have to find a bigger arena. So there's hundreds of people there. Obviously, you're live on ESPN, you're live on YouTube. There's thousands of people watching there. There's a lot of pressure. As for prep, I generally try and keep quite relaxed. I know there's some people who are sort of there, sort of still practicing and tweaking with their landers last minute. I very much don't believe in that. I think if I don't know it the day of, I'm never going to know it. So, I would never want to cram before an exam. I'm like, either know or I don't. And you just sort of enjoy the show as well. I mean, the day 3 is 2 semifinals of 12, and then the top 6 through the semifinal go through to a final. So there'll be another semifinal to watch as well. I think most people would rather be semifinal 1 so they can then have semifinal 2 as like a relaxing break rather than doing 2 back to back. But you get to watch it. There's a lot of breaks in between it all as well as people are setting up. So it's pretty like relaxed atmosphere. I mean, obviously I can't have a beer until it's finished, but I'll try and just soak it all up, chat to people, watch the other events. I mean, I should also mention that we're sort of the main event, main card, but before that, all of the collegiate challenge, like the university championships, is going on for like 4 hours before that, because there's a team competition and there's an individual competition, and they generally take a bit longer. So you can go along to that as well. I mean, I watched the finals, the university one last year, and it's just good to get in the mood. But I'm certainly, I wouldn't say I'm like that.
So do you show up on like day 1 and like scout the competition, or do you just kind of just show up there? If your time is 10 a.m. on day 3, you're showing up at 10 a.m. on day 3 type of thing.
Yeah, so one thing that they've also done is quite clever is like alongside all of this, they do like it's called the Active Cell Conference. I'll be speaking at it. I have an affiliate code if people want to get the tickets. Reach out in some way. And essentially, so it's like an Excel conference, all sorts of different people. So yeah, I think I'm doing the first one. There's people talking about Power Query. We have, I think it was Jared Dave this year. He comes from Microsoft to be like, this is the new button they've added this year, or about to add this year. So it's exciting to see the new thing there. It's a really good conference, and you learn a lot. And then generally, all like, so day one is done, I think, at lunchtime. Day 2 and 3 is like done after the conference, like in the evenings. So you go to the conference, you mill about, you chat to people. I will say, like, in general, like, I think the thing that most people look forward to, like, aside from the event, is just like, it's a really good community and catching up
Yeah.
with people in person. Like, it really, compared to, like, I know a lot of esports are known for being a little toxic, and I think we're like the absolute opposite. It's such a friendly group of people. People are just, especially it's you found your nerdy friend. It's great.
Yeah.
So people, catching up with old friends, chatting about the thing, and then, so day one, you sort of, a lot of people like to play along if they can. I don't know if they'll be able to do this year because there's not enough IT things to manage without having stalls that don't actually mean anything adding into the mix. But yeah, day 1 and day 2, like you certainly, day 2, I'll certainly go along and watch. I remember last year, 3-time world champion Andrew Nye, he qualified for day 3. He always does. And essentially he gets to like, just watch the carnage and be slightly smug. And I'm like looking forward to joining the slightly smug watching carnage gang this year. Cause like day 2, it's there'll be some good people who are going to be knocked out because with how much it's grown, there's just there's more than 24 great people. So not all of them can make it.
So what do you get for winning the Excel World Championships? What's the ultimate prize at the end of the day?
So you win $5,000, which is nice. I always say it could be a bit higher. The thing I always say is to Microsoft, $1 million is a rounding error. So
Absolutely.
I reckon they could maybe put a little more prize money in. To be fair, the prize fund is 70 grand across both competitions, just this one. But the prize fund's a lot, but they generally like you get paid a grand for being the top 32. Like if you get a day 2 ticket, you get $1,000 you turn up to Vegas. So they do spread the wealth quite a bit, which is nice. But the main thing that everyone seems like very excited about is you also win like a genuine, like massive WWE sized wrestling belt, which you get to keep. So that's apparently under my television. They're really fun. They're really cool. They're not very easy to put up anywhere, but that's the main thing. And obviously a nice trophy. But yeah, the belt's the big winner of the day, I'd say.
And do you get a lot of recognition? Like, do a lot of people, know your name and stuff? Because again, you look at how often Microsoft Excel is used. Like, it's used, extensively throughout, finance and the business world and things like that. And people knew who the world champ was. Like, it's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly was a lot of media attention. I'd say, like, my January, February, March, like, I was on some TV or radio show pretty much every week. I was on US national TV, Canadian national. I think it wasn't Canadian national TV. I was only on Ontario TV. A lot of radio. It's on the front page of the New York Times. That was bizarre.
Wow.
You couldn't tell. Like, you could only tell it was me if you knew it was me, because it was like me, like holding my belt from the back. But yes, there was a lot of media attention, which is really, really good. And pardon me, sorry. And I had like and if you watch the championship back, well, I have the final 8 from 2023 won like a XL varsity style jacket that's genuinely lovely. Like, I wear it everywhere, and I do get a lot of people who are like, "Oh, it's a cool jacket," and you talk to them about it. And there have certainly been like a few people who have been like, "Oh, I saw you on X," like whatnot. So I do get recognized that, like, mainly in the jacket. I don't think I've ever been recognized by somebody. I'm not wearing my XL jacket, but I don't think I would want to, and I don't think I should be, at least for the time being. But yeah, you do get people who recognize you, and that's quite fun. And yeah, there was a lot of attention then, and then there was a little bit more recently. Like XL's 40th birthday, a lot of tech magazines. I need to get back to them actually. A lot of tech magazines and whatnot doing like, a history of XL's 40th birthday. They find out about the competition, want to chat to me. So yeah, that has been quite a bit of attention. And like it's a weird way to get your 15 minutes of fame, I'd say.
Well, and I would have thought like Microsoft brings you in at some point, Michael, and says, "Hey, like this is the world Excel champ. Like you get pushed up, put on some pedestal. I don't know where they have the pedestal in Microsoft, but I would have thought they would have some statue of you somewhere in Microsoft. Is that true or not true?
I'll suggest it to them. I don't know if I have one yet. I know Satya Nadella likes the competition. I
Okay.
remember he commented on my LinkedIn post, which that's always if somebody doesn't do
Wow.
LinkedIn, that's quite funny. The amount of LinkedIn influencers who would kill for that, and don't do it at all. And like he's posted at the competition a couple of times before, so I know he's aware of it. Um, I think obviously, I think a bit of him like he quite likes it, like it is quite a cool thing. He likes that. I know Microsoft also quite keen to use it to sell more Copilot because they can't sell more Excel, but they can sell more Copilot. And like certainly, and to show how far AI has come, I remember in the intermissions last year they were doing like a Copilot demo of like this is how you'd use Copilot to solve all of the Excel geometry questions, but it was always the easy one. It was like, well, yeah, otherwise you could just type in the answer, that would also work. And we were laughing about it again, and now it's beating us, so he's laughing now. But yeah, so Microsoft, I think, they do sort of support a competition. They have to put their name on it and whatnot. But yeah, as I said, it would be nice if they added a little bit to the prize money because I think if they did that, that would always draw more people as well.
Absolutely. Well, and do you get any calls from the competition, like Google Sheets or someone like that, saying, Michael, can you come over to this side or anything like that?
Uh, yeah. Not so far. No, I know. I mean, did a couple of rounds of Google Sheets when he'd already like guaranteed himself the top seed just because he thought it'd be funny. Because they are similar, but they're different enough that like the muscle memory does get you unstuck very fast. My wife she works at startups, so like she has a Mac and uses Google Sheets. So like she'll ask me for Google Sheets help. I'm like, I genuinely cannot operate this machine. I don't know what I'm doing. Like I just want to control that. What is this command button? And why is it not doing what I want it to do? Like it's generally infuriating. And obviously if you get used to it, it's fine. Yeah, I know. Like there has been nothing's really come of it so far. I think there's been a lot of sort of stops, like false starts. But I know there have been chats with me and members of the community about like us helping to train AI models. But I think they've instead hired a load of ex bankers to do that for them instead. Because I think there was a bit of a thought of like and I hope they realize this because it's not hard to train AI to build a three-state model because they all look kind of the same, just with different tensors or whatever. But a real test of like an AI's Excel, I think, would be how good it is at these competitions because they require more lateral thinking and problem solving, and it requires the AI to actually be intelligent rather than just regurgitating what it's seen 10,000 times before. So as I said, there's been some chats. I think there have been false starts so far, which has been disappointing, but who knows what the future has.
Yeah, it's like Big Blue, right? The old chess.
Deep Blue,
kids.
yes, yeah.
Yeah. And Michael, I heard through a source, Bill Jelen told me, is that there's such a thing as Yarmy's Army. So how do we become a member of Yarmy's Army? Is that a thing? And how big is that army?
Yeah, the Jarman, I would say, a lot of people actually, especially like the North American listeners, don't know why that's a funny name. There in England, there's a thing called the Barmy Army, and the Barmy Army are essentially England cricket fans who go to like India or Australia and watch the cricket. Mainly because you have to be Barmy to spend that much money to go that far to watch a 5-day game. I don't hate cricket, but yeah, it's a long way to go. And they all obviously because cricket, not a lot happens, they'll get drunk. So the first year, 2021, when it was a virtual competition, like a couple of mates were like in the chat going, Jarmy Army instead of Barmy Army. And it kind of stuck. So yeah, we now have, we have merch, the Jarmy Army. So they were like, the competition reached out to me and it's like, oh, we're going to do a Jarmy Army jersey. And I was like, great. Do you do bucket hats? And they were like, we've never really been asked that before. Let us come back to you. And eventually they're like, yeah, no, we can do bucket hats. So you can now go online. If you Google it, you can buy the Jarmy Young jersey, which is great. But I think the main thing you should get is the Jarmy Young bucket hat.
The bucket
Because
hat.
I think in asking for bucket hats, which are a terrible piece of clothing, make you look very impressionable, I think I've secretly been a genius because when you're out there on the stage and everyone's wearing different jerseys, you've no idea who's supporting who. But you can tell who's wearing a bucket because they stick out. So I'll very happily be able to spot my fans in the crowd. Yes, if you want to get they're the bucket hats. They're quite nice, quite fashionable. They wear quite large. You can go out and buy one. I get none of the proceeds. It's not an ad. It's just if you want to buy a hat that nobody else will really own or have heard of, and you'd be like, oh, it's for a random XL guy. That's a thing that you can do. You don't have to buy a hat, of course. You can just support me. It sort of YouTube chats. Come along to Vegas. It is, and I think a lot of people have said this. It is a more exciting spectator sport than you think it is. Not because you can follow what's going on. I think the biggest problem we have is that nobody can follow what's going on. Apart from the score is going up and down. It's like watching a race, but you never really know who's winning. Or you know who's in the lead, but you don't know, like, so you're watching like the Tour de France or something. You're like, well, so-and-so's in the lead, but are they going to stay in the lead or whatnot? It's the same sort of thing. Like, there's a lot of exciting moments. A thing they brought into Vegas, which I think is terrifying as a competitor and makes it great as a viewer, is every 5 minutes, whoever's in last is just kicked out. So there's always like someone in danger of being kicked out, and like, you follow them, and they put some points on the board, and someone else in danger, but then maybe they'd fight back. And that's where sort of, some of the bonus questions that I was talking about earlier can come into play. Because you're like, oh, well, I'm in a lot of trouble. In an ideal world, I'd carry on working on this, but I'm not sure I'm going to finish it in 2 minutes. But maybe I can go and look at something else and get some points there that will get me where I need to be. So, the lights of the crowd and whatnot. It's quite exciting.
So for the 2025 competition, Michael, what are the 3 days? What, like the dates on the calendar? What are the 3 days, and how do people watch it?
Yes, it's December. I think it's the 1st to the 3rd. I recorded them a teaser video saying it was the 7th to the 4th. That was last year. So 1st to 3rd, which is a Monday to a Wednesday. Which is also the same days as the conferences, if people want to go along to that. If you want to go along, if you want to come to the conference, come along with Vegas, you can. I think tickets for the actual to be in the arena are close to selling out.
Okay.
I think there's like 70 odd left. If you don't want to do that because Vegas is too far, or it is a long way to go up Pixel for a lot of people. So yeah, it's live on ESPN 2 or 3. I forget which one. I was originally 3, might have been promoted to 2.
Okay.
The main competition, the University Championships on ESPNU, originally. That's only if you're in the US. For the rest of the world, or if you're in the US and you just have ESPN, it's also live streamed on YouTube. So you can watch it there. You can watch that and watch the previous things as well to see what it's like.
Last question for you, Michael. For the average person out there, what is if there's one function in Excel that you would tell them that you must learn this, what is Michael Jarman's go-to Excel function? And probably not one that's going to put you over the top at the World Championships, but for the average person out there, if we go back to Operas in terms of what you guys do and helping clients, is there one Excel function that says, look, if you were to learn one thing, this is what's going to save you a whole bunch of time and make your life at work a lot easier?
That's a really good question. I think I'll give sort of an answer I would have given 2 or 3 years ago, and an answer I probably would give now, which is a bit more advanced. So, I mean, I think like when I won Model Off, and like Microsoft asked me this, and I quoted as saying, it's like, you can build most of a financial model with some product and need an index match. Like, I think if you understand what those 3 do to a high level, you can get most of the way there. Because certainly financial modeling, you're rarely doing any groundbreaking maths. You are adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. You are case erasing to a power.
Yep.
But you're rarely doing anything that groundbreaking. It's more you have to understand the finance behind it in financial mathematics so that you can add and subtract the right thing. Which is why I think like some products, just because there's so many times you just need to multiply to erase together, and it does some other stuff as well. And then index match index match is good for like retiming things. You're essentially going to get data. It's like, I want to look up. If you're used to using VLOOKUP, index match is better, but also XLOOKUP is now better than that in some way. So
Is execs look up better than index match then?
Most of the time it is. Index match is still better if you want to do in-depth like match, like you had a 2D like square and you want to match both up on this column and this row. Index match is still better because XLOOKUP doesn't really work in 2D. XLOOKUP has more options that are helpful. Like it has a wildcard match. I think it now has a regex match. Well, I don't know what regex is. I probably need to learn that in the next month. It has like a default, what happens if you can't find it, which, the old VLOOKUP and old index match wouldn't. So it just has some nice quality of life things that make it more powerful. So that's what I would generally say was like an intermediate answer. As an advanced answer, I'd say let. Let is a really good function that essentially, if you have a lot of intermediate steps that you don't really care about or want to see, you can kind of be, okay, I'm going to start with this, and then my intermediate thing is this, and my ending thing is this. And if you're ever writing a function where, you're repeating the same block of logic 3 or 4 times for whatever reason, it's a thing you've looked up or an answer you then want to do something with, like, I want to calculate an answer, and then if it's less than 1, do this. If it's more than 1, between 1 and 2, do this. 4 and 2, do this. You can, instead of repeating that block of logic of the answer each time, you can say, let this be called intermediate answer, Brian, whatever you want to call it. And then the rest of the function then uses that as like a stand-in for your big block of logic. I would say that is one that is very powerful and you can do a great many things with. It is it's a weapon to wield cautiously, because I think what a lot of people are hearing, this massive 5-line function, I don't really know what it does. I've been using let to condense it into 3 lines. And I'm like, well, you sure shouldn't really have a function that's that long. You should break it out. Like, sometimes the intermediate steps are there for a reason. It's good to show them for a reason. But sometimes you either don't need them, or they're just going to take up room, or certainly for people working with like dynamic arrays, they're like an indeterminate size, and they're going to still somewhere. You don't know where they're going to go. So it's great for that sort of thing. So yeah, they're the, if you know those 4 or 5, you can get a long, long way.
Got it. Well, Michael, thank you very much for joining us. We wish you all the best at the 2025 Excel World Championships. We all know where to watch it, and for those that are interested in taking a trip to Vegas, or perhaps not too far away from Vegas, grab a ticket or show up at the conference. But Michael, all the best for the 2025 competition, and thank you very much for joining us today. I think it's a really, when I found out about this, is the Excel World Championship, I think it's a really, really cool thing, because there are so many people that use Excel across the globe. To find somebody like yourself who is the crowned world champion is a pretty cool thing. So yeah, thanks very much for taking time to join us today.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on. It's been a great time.
Great.